Howdy, howdy, delicious people! Today is another episode of The Masked Singer Season 2, Episode 10, with a very festive and seasonal like episode. It's a very holiday centered episode, so before realistically we get started with this entire review, I am going to just start singing the song Jingle Bells. Oh wait, that might be a copyright problem. So, I guess we're not gonna do that. Anyways, we're gonna get on to reviewing this episode. Talk again as a review, pretty much all of my picks for who I thought these people were, and then ultimately we're going to be unmasking who these people were. The end of it all, and then after that, a whole wrap up of seasonal good times of what all happened through this season and whatever and what have you. Anyways, let's first off get on to who had gotten eliminated. If you guys do not want to know, or if you guys want to go somewhere else, for a minute or a second or two to know who I thought, went home, because they did, and what have you. Originally, I was kind of like through this episode, I was assuming that Fox and maybe probably Thingamajig was gonna go home. I just felt that it was just kind of like, okay, it's kind of their time. Um, but there had been people in this episode that kind of had sounded very very differently than they probably have ever had. So yeah, more than likely because they probably assumed that they were gonna go home anyway. So why not just sound the way they sound? Anyways, if anything, the two that did go home was actually Leopard and Thingamajig. So by the end of this episode, you're going to see who they are. So let's talk about Thingamajig at first, who I had assumed could quite possibly be this bizarre looking Wookiee like character. I had assumed that it would be Montel Jordan. Or I naturally assumed, because Google is my best friend, no. Kristen, of course, gave me a little knowledge, and I just like, sure, why not toss this out there? And then ever since then, I've just been consistently going with Victor Oladipo. And, who knows if at the end of this whole thing, if I would be right and or wrong. Bizarrely, out of just the magic of thin air or probably a Google account, Ken Jong also came up with the same answer. Bizarrely enough, all of a sudden there was a clue of Indiana Jones like costumish gear, and then all of a sudden Kim Jong sprung out of motion and started mentioning that maybe it is Victor Oladipo because he's such a big fan of the Indiana Pacers. Sure, yeah, I'm sure you just out of thin air came to that consensus after you turned off your phone and put it in your pocket. Oh, come on. Maybe Ken is just a really basketball fan, and man, I've gone through and I've kind of put on here a lot of Google answers as well. So if every Google answer is ultimately correct, then in much respect, or anybody who ended up commenting on here and told me like, "Oh yeah, it's this person." Yeah, definitely pick this person. Um yeah, that's pretty much who my answers have been for uh a portion of the season, and what have you. So let's see by the end of this episode if Thingamajig is who I had to mention. There was at one point I also mentioned that it could quite possibly be Wayne Brady, but I don't know. We'll kind of shuffle around to see if something might sound different in some aspect. Let's talk about the leopard. The leopard. I have sealed the deal consistently, saying that this person is Seal. and I have not really wavered for a very long time. At the end of the time today with this review, you might see if I am correct and or incorrect. And in much respect, people started coming up with that same consensus as well. Surefire enough, Robin Thicke came up with that consensus. They only took him like a month and a half to come up to that consensus. But luckily for them, Google probably eventually gave them the answer. No. I'm sure they finally figured it out towards the end that it's like, oh no, like I remember that voice. Come on. I like I'm sure everybody goes into Google and tries to figure out something, and like everybody does it. It's okay. It's okay if everybody wants to just Google everything. It's cool. It's awesome. It's good. It's what have you. It's chicken babies. So let's move on and let's talk about the Fox. The Fox, admittedly, Robin Thicke had mentioned that it could quite possibly be AJ from Backstreet Boys. I'm never going with that answer anymore. That just sounds too goofy for me to actually like say that that could actually be a thing. So, my thing is that I'm going to guess that the Fox is either one of two people. It's actually either Jamie Foxx, which I'm kind of hesitant to really say that anymore, or it could be quite possibly Wayne Brady, because a lot of people are saying it's Wayne Brady now. And reasonably, from what I had heard, evidently Wayne Brady is eventually going to be on a show called Black Lightning, being some kind of character in that show. So more than likely, maybe while he's filming that show, he is also on here singing along. So, um, yeah. So it ultimately could be Wayne Brady, and it actually could make sense for why this character or could be actually Wayne Brady instead of Jamie Foxx. Maybe it's a little too on the nose, and reasonably with the way that the Fox sounded tonight, I'm like, okay, this sounded more like Wayne Brady now more than he ever did. Maybe because he just naturally assumed that he was going to go home, so he's just like, "F it, I'm just gonna sound like however I want to sound." Anyways, the flamingo is pretty much the only real question mark that I can really not quite exactly figure out quite yet. I haven't narrowed down anything quite yet. And my best bet is to still with the answer that I had gotten from Kristen. I'm assuming it's probably Adrian Bylar. Reasonably looking at it, there was some kind of cheetah luggage thing in the background, and one of the judges caught up on that. Reasonably for the Fox, there wasn't much of any kind of clues to really give me any consensus of anything for the Fox. The leopard, there was one little thing on one of the things that said um, songs for animals. I'm like, well, come on, songs for animals. Um, for for the flamingo, I'm still probably going with Tien Tamara, sister, but I'm also gonna go with Adrian Bailar, and maybe still Fantasia, even though it looks more and more to be like Fantasia is probably not on here. Reasonably, because again, um, the flamingo sounded much more differently than she probably has ever had tonight. Bizarrely, I don't understand why. Maybe because a lot of the people just assumed that there were probably a lot of them were all like, well, we're probably just gonna go home tomorrow, so F it. Like, let's just sound how we want to sound and what have you. So the Rottweiler, who had sang the song "Mr. Brightside" by the Killers. I really enjoyed the Leopard song, "Big Spender." That was a pretty good song. I didn't think that Leopard was gonna go home. Like, I just kind of assumed it'd probably be the Fox and Thingamajig. But ultimately, I guess you can uh, look at the plethora of songs that the Fox and Thingamajig have done, and I guess you can call them safe for most of the point. But I think, if anything, the whole dating of Nicole thing for Thingamajig kind of like really just kind of they drove that into the ground a little bit too much. So for the Wattweiler, I had assumed for the longest time that it was this guy named Daughtry. One little added interesting thing that I've learned about Daughtry lately is actually Daughtry is a artist of some kind, because he's actually working on some comic books lately. He's been doing some Batman books. He's been doing some art for that and what have you. So go ahead and check out some Daughtry comic books that he's been doing out lately. The only one that I know so far is Batman. So if you're seeing a lot of artsy things and what have you, like, yeah, clearly that's Daughtry. He's doing comic books lately. Daughtry had Sing Mr. Brightside. I'm like, okay, this is cool. I enjoyed this song. It didn't really seem exactly like it fit the Christmas like mold to a T. So I'm like, okay, this is a good song to choose. Yeah, so all the kind of reviews and all who I talked to or talked about for you, and it seems like Robin Thicke and all the other judges are kind of slowly but surely coming to my side of all these choices. And surefire enough, a lot of them are actually coming to my same consensuses of who these people might be. It only took them a bulk of the entire season to be able to do so, but these things tend to happen. So, reasonably, if any of these judges want a little help for next season, probably give me a jangle. Give me a dejangled unchained. give me a holler. I'm on YouTube, and what have you. Anyways, so we are going to, of course, give you a double five countdown, and I'm going to be unmasking the thingamajig here for you today, and then we are going to be unmasking the leopard afterwards. So, if you don't want to know who these characters are, who, if I was right and or wrong, then I would strongly advise you right now to click off. But if you want to hear everything that I have to say about the rest of the show, you know what to do. Spoiler time, everybody. We are going to be unmasking now. So, yeah. Unmask. Victor Oladipo evidently was the thingamajig. Really, again, for a lot of people, in this instance, Google might have been your best friend, or people who actually had, or who actually do watch basketball at this point, might have known and picked up on some clues for this character. Reasonably, I had seen some pictures, because Google, where Victor had a right knee injury, and in the clues, there was a guy that was wearing a splint or a knee brace or what have. No, it was more of a knee brace. And so it's like, oh, okay, well, I think I can go closer and closer to the Victor Oladipo thing, because it actually does make a lot more sense. And how, like, it doesn't seem like Thingamajig ever wasn't a character that wasn't heavily moving around, because reasonably, if you have a messed up knee, you'd rather just like stand in one spot and not have to move around too much. If it was probably Montel Jordan, he would probably be doing maybe some choreography or some stuff like that, and you would see him move a little bit more than you would see Victor. So ultimately, by the end of this, I'd kind of gotten really much closer to Victor Oladipo than I did Montel Jordan, because at the end of it all, I was like, okay, the clue is knee brace, so okay, it's Victor. So luckily, I guess, score one on the scoreboard for getting an outside source of knowledge to be able to, of course, tell me who Thingamajig is, because Kristen had given me that kernel of knowledge. And then on top of that, like I like from day one, you kind of saw it on Google. You like they already like Google already figured it out for us. Ultimately, or whoever was on Google that was telling people, oh yeah, it's Victor Oladipo. Yeah, I'm a Indiana Pacers fan, and Victor is injured. So yeah. Anyways, evidently Ken Jong got this right. Maybe he watches. Maybe he's a big fan of my videos. I don't know. So maybe he eventually got that same cue and what have you. Anyways, um, and then Robin Thicke still went with Montel Jordan. If it was right or wrong or whatever, indifferent. So yeah, Victor Oladipo was the thingamajig. So now I'm going to be unmasking the leopard. So I'm going to give you some time now, just 5 seconds, and then we're going to mask the leopard because I let you know that we're unmasking both of these. So now, Seal! Seal had been the leopard. If you kind of look back on how long that I've been saying, it's Seal, I'm sealing the deal. Like, I think it's completely Seal, 100% Seal. I think it's a boatload of that Seal. Um, I've been saying Seal for I don't know how long now, and finally, we get the final, actual, um, legitimate unmasking of the leopard, and now we get the consensus of finally Seal, and it took all the judges so long to figure that out as well. Like recently, when I first, um, maybe not the first time I heard him, but then like kind of like shortly after I started consistently started to hear him, like I'm like, this is Seal, like easily. Like a lot of people were saying like RuPaul and all this other stuff, and like I know the judges, they were consistently saying it's like, oh yeah, it has to be this guy. I'm like, no. Like I've heard him sing on commercials. Like I've heard this guy that you're talking is on here singing commercials. It's not this person. Believe me, it's not this person. This person, excuse me. This person sounds nothing like that. Um, but yeah, so we had unmasked the leopard, and this is a real, true, in all actuality, point on the scoreboard for me, because nobody really actually had this nobody really had this answer. Like I think I had the this answer before almost everyone else did, and what have you, seemingly for the longest time. And then everybody else got around to getting to my answer. Even the judges, it took them a while. Um, and I'm just like, why isn't everybody else thinking that this is Seal by now? Just kind of like for the Rottweiler, I'm very confused how no one has said a lick of anything about Daughtry yet. But a lot of other people are like starting to say it's Daughtry, but it's not enough people. It's not enough people to really say, to really um, get Google to just be like, yeah, the Rottweiler, it's Daughtry, it's Chris Daughtry. I think because I think the Mass Singer doesn't want you to know. The Mass Singer really does not want you to know that the Rottweiler is Daughtry, so they're even going to Google and like, hey, don't tell them, don't tell them, don't tell them it's Daughtry. So that way, when he does eventually win this whole thing, and he gets unmasked and everybody's like, "Oh my god, that's Daughtry? Yeah, I know who Daughtry is. The comic book writer of Batman and also the singer of songs like Feels Like Tonight and the game is or the It's Not Over and Traitor and Renegade and this and that. It's like Seal had been done doing so many songs of Kiss from a Rose and all those other good ones that he did later on that I can't quite remember at this point in juncture. But evidently, also Victor is a professional singer as well as being a basketball player. Good for him. It's what I found out kind of through the grapevine of knowledge that people come on here and or not come on here that I just find out through sources of people. So yeah, one true score on the point board for me because this answer was always mine. And in time, people more and more got closer to that answer. And so I'm sure next season, I am probably not going to be able to guess anyone. I'm not going to know who anyone is. I'm probably not going to be able to figure out a lick of anybody next season because I'm almost kind of getting pretty close to almost batting 500 at this point. So, yeah. So, let's, as a complete and overhaul of review, let's give to you who all has been unmasked at this point throughout this entire season. And then I can probably have to do a score check of how many people I had gotten right and or wrong by this point. Because I think at this point, I could probably be much more right than wrong at this point. So, we are going to look at all these. So, let's actually start adding all the characters up for point value. Black Widow, I had gotten wrong, but I did get the butterfly right. The eagle, I had gotten wrong, but I had gotten thingamajig right. The flamingo, I am assuming that I could quite possibly get that still correct, but in much respect, um, I'm not going to put all my eggs in that basket. The flower, Patty LaBelle, I had gotten correct. The fox, I'm assuming now it's probably going to be Wayne Brady, so I can probably be right about that. Um, Ice cream was Ninja. I got that wrong because legitimately, I didn't think a YouTuber would be on this show. Kelly Osbourne, wrong. Because I wouldn't have thought at all that it could quite possibly be Kelly Osbourne. No disrespect to her. It's just, um, I, the clues were really giving me a lot of confusion. The leopard, I had guessed was Seal this a bulk of this entire time, and I was correct. For the panda, I had guessed that it was Layla Ali, which was correct at this point. The penguin, Sherry, I had guessed that incorrect. So we're almost tied at this point. The Rottweiler, I'm assuming is Daughtry, and I'm going to assume that that's going to be right. But again, eggs, basket, what have you. Paul Schaefer, I had ultimately come to this consensus that it could be Paul Schaefer, so I had gotten that one correct. Johnny Weir, there was nowhere near me being able to figure that out, so I'd gotten that wrong. So we are still betting we are still batting 50-50 right now. And then the tree. The tree I had coincidentally had gotten correct. So right now, as it stands, without counting without counting the fox, flamingo, and Rottweiler, I have more correct than incorrect for this season. So, because I have one more correct than incorrect. So, looking at it, the Rottweiler, I pretty much could tell you that I'm going to be right. I hope so. The Fox, it could go either way. The Flamingo, could go either way. Um, but I don't know. I think between the Fox and Flamingo, like my guesses are as close as it could honestly be to being correct. So I guess this season could be yet another winning season. The first season I had guessed pretty much all the way through, for the most point, correct. This one was a more daunting task than the first season because the first season didn't have as many people in it, and a lot of the people did have very like standoutish like voices. And for the first season, a lot of the people who had sang, I had been very familiar with a lot of the people, especially people like Joey Fatone, even Terry Bradshaw, and the guy who had played Cheech and Chong. Um, yeah, those were kind of like yeah, I basically know every single one of these people. Whoever got picked. Donny Osmond was kind of a wild card from last season, and then there was some like comedians and stuff mixed in there from the first season, um, and what have you. That I was just like ah, but it seems like this season eventually wrapping up will be a winning season, regardless of ultimately how it's either tie or win. Because reasonably, if I get Rottweiler correct, then I tie. If I get Rottweiler incorrect and everyone else incorrect, then I lose. Um, but I'm not assuming that's going to happen. I don't. So reasonably, tie or win. Tie or win. I'm kind of putting all of my I'm putting all my eggs in one basket for the Rottweiler and being correct. So yeah, be interesting to see how this season wraps up because next week is going to be the last episode said season for some reason because of the Christmas break. So yeah, reasonably, yeah, Wayne Brady could probably be the Fox. Adrian Bailon could be the Flamingo, and Daughtry could be the Rottweiler. And ultimately, it'd be a winning season all around. High fives, everybody, and what have you. So yeah, ultimately, it's either tie or win. So that's what's happening. That's what's happening for this wrap up. So I'm gonna wrap this up so I can go and either do another video or upload this one. So yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. So yeah, I'm feeling good about this season now. I'm feeling good because recently, if I even get one character wrong, it won't matter. Reasonably, if I get Flamingo completely wrong and all form and function and what have you, if I get Fox and Rottweiler right, I still have a winning season. And so I have been currently still like going the straight and narrow path and what have you of getting most of it right at least, or at least 50%. We have 50% of this show, and that's weird. Um, like I thought that ultimately, I guess adding it all up, I didn't think I'd be 50%. At least by this point, I was like, yeah, I'm probably like I have to get every single thing right to be able like. But now it's like okay, well, it's either tie or win. So yeah, Good, great. So, cool, interesting. So I'm gonna get out of here. Bye, everybody, because most of this time is just me babbling on five about things. So, bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.